I entered the magic world as soon as I could read in 1959 or thereabouts. Our gorgeous Carnegie Library in Ames, Iowa was well stocked with all manner of magic books, some strictly for little kids just beginning, but many others were the real deal, written by professionals. All throughout elementary school, I was constantly trying out new magic effects from books, constructing the required props myself. My performances in those days were either for family and friends or in school talent shows. At age 12, perhaps the most consequential event in my magical life transpired. The International Brotherhood of Magicians, a large worldwide organization, held its annual convention in nearby Des Moines. I was too young to be a member then, but it hosted a gala stage show open to the public and featuring some half-dozen of the world's foremost magicians. My parents and I attended that performance June 17, 1965, at the glamorous Paramount Theater. The highlight of the evening was being chosen for the audience committee and actually standing on stage with Dunninger, the greatest mentalist who ever trod the boards. A friend of Houdini, he was a direct link to that glorious era of vaudeville. This half-century later, I still thrill to the memory of that night, witnessing the Titan in action, standing next to him even, looking down upon the enthusiastic packed house, which he held completely spellbound. Dunninger truly was a phenomenon. My ambitions waxed wild now. The following summer in 1966, my parents somehow contacted Bruno, the elegant Dutch magician, who happened to live just 30 miles away, being the chief photographer for the Des Moines Register newspaper. And so I began weekly lessons with him, learning the real secrets of the craft from a master. His short life was not without incident, being born in Indonesia but raised in Holland, and at age 18 captured by the Nazis and forced into a slave labor camp. After the war, he finally found a bit of respite when he became an American citizen. Bruno guided me to develop what would become the sleight of hand jewel in my performances, the multiplying billiard balls. But equally important, he was my role model, schooling me in the finer points of magical showmanship. And though separated by 30 years of age, we became fast friends. Bruno passed away in 1972 of a massive heart attack at age 49, just a year after I left for college. After that glorious summer of tutelage under Bruno, I was ready to start performing in a more traditional sense, that is, actually being paid to do so. To get my name around, I began by donating my services to various causes. Most noteworthy was the benefit I put on to help raise money for the town of Belmont, Iowa, which had been devastated by a tornado October 14, 1966. Besides raising some $18, which is about $150 in today's value, this also landed me a feature write-up on the front page of the Ames Daily Tribune. That was when I began using the stage name Conjuro. Immediately after the Belmont fundraiser, I ran a single 2-inch advertisement in the Tribune. That's all it took. During that Christmas season, on up to Valentine's Day, I performed over 60 shows, sometimes even 2 a night, at different venues. My name appeared in newspaper stories quite often then. On top of it all, I was pocketing $10 a gig, standard fee. Incidentally, at my very first paid performance, I magically produced a pair of frilly ladies' panties from the flames of a chafing dish. While being able to fool was important, it was the unexpected humorous edge, pretty tame by modern standards, which made me realize that surprise, laughter, and wonder all go hand in hand. In June of 1967, I was finally old enough to become a member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. I was sponsored by Thad Critchfield and Holland Shepard, who were officers in the Des Moines affiliate called the Justo Hijo Ring, which I also joined. I began attending its monthly meetings then. I always loved watching Holland Shepard perform, for he was an exceptionally skilled yet hilarious magician who really knew how to have fun and share that enthusiasm with the audience. The irony wasn't lost on me. The previous year, a man from Holland had guided me along, and now a man named Holland was doing likewise. He really was an extremely kind and generous person, anxious to help a novice like myself. In those days, Holland would always watch my performances at the Des Moines meetings carefully and offer exceedingly useful feedback on how to strengthen whatever was needed. In a way, he became my informal tutor. A couple months thereafter, my parents and I were off to Colon, Michigan for my first national gathering with conjuring professionals. This was the famous get-together, which has been held annually at the renowned Abbott's Magic Company since 1937. At one time, Abbott's was the world's largest manufacturer of magic props. Moreover, Colon was also the great Blackstone's home base during the off-season. In those several days, I met some of the magic world's finest, starting with Riesel Bordner, longtime owner of Abbott's. Here he is welcoming me at the entrance to the company. Though hosting a bevy of the best, the Abbott's get-together was quite intimate and informal. So I was able to rub shoulders and chat with many of my heroes, of whom I had only previously read. My favorite was that rascal, Duke Stern. His comedy act for magicians only on the final night had tears of laughter streaming down my mother's face. Duke was so gracious to an eager young pup, offering all manner of encouragement. Naturally, I also sought out autographs as keepsakes. For example, at one of the stage performances held in the high school gymnasium, I sat next to and chatted with the grandfatherly Monk Watson, who whittled a piece of wood with his pocket knife during the breaks. And I met Neil Foster, perhaps the premier graduate of the long-running and exclusive Chavez Studio of Magic. During the meet and greets, I bumped into the totally wacky Senator Clark Crandall, sporting his trademark waxed mustache. He was in rare form that day, pulling all manner of pranks. Everyone, I mean everyone, seemed to know Senator Crandall and expected outrageous behavior. Note what he inscribed on my attendance ticket. Colon was a dinky old-fashioned town of about 1,000, and so had no hotels or motels. Instead, all the tolerant residents rented out their basements, attics, and spare bedrooms during the get-together. Then again, quite a few of us just pitched a tent in the town park. That's our rig on the left. Also nearby was a small Amish community whose inhabitants wandered in the town from time to time. You have to wonder what they, in their black, white, and gray fittings, must have made of all the garish colors, stripes, and plaids bedecking the several hundred flamboyant conjurers milling about. Thanks to the trove of new books and props harvested from Abbott's, my performances in 1968 became considerably more zesty, and the organizations seeking me out were more diverse than ever, thanks to word-of-mouth advertising. I was hired by huge refrigeration manufacturers, national numismatist clubs, veterinary medicine societies, Iowa State University, county fairs, and more. I still did the occasional benefit too, just to keep my name in the local press. But when high school began the following year, I essentially went on hiatus, what with all the usual distractions of teenage life. Then, in 1971, I migrated northward to begin college. To scrape by, I returned to performing sporadically, picking up a few gigs here and there in my new state. This is the promo sheet I used then. Music eventually appealed more strongly, though, and I wound up playing guitar in a zany 50s rock and roll band to put myself through undergrad and graduate school. Meanwhile, my IBM membership had lapsed, and I essentially considered myself retired from magic. There was the occasional performance for company parties, but otherwise I embarked on a rather frenzied life as a mathematics professor in 1984, and thoughts of magic receded even more. But then, for whatever reason, a decade later, the magic bug hit again. Partly nostalgia, I suppose, with memories of Dunninger, Bruno, and Holland Shepherd no doubt to blame. In any event, my membership in the IBM was reinstated in 1997. A few years thereafter, mentalism, as a distinct aspect of the mystery arts, beckoned, and thoughts of putting together an act containing all original material began to appeal. These pictures were shot for my proposed promo materials. I in fact did design and learn a complete cabaret mentalism act, and even had a couple dry run-throughs with a handful of colleagues. Simultaneously, my personal magic and mentalism library exploded in size, becoming quite substantial. Books. While in this phase, I also began to create more original material and write extensively on magic, mental magic, and mentalism. That output showed up in some articles for the Linking Ring Journal, including a pair of one-man parades in that periodical. I was so honored and tickled when in fact one of my routines from those garnered the Award of Outstanding Merit from the IBM for Best Mental Trick back in 2005. With retirement from the classroom in 2014, I came to realize it's the invention side of magic that really appeals to me more than anything. This point was further driven home after unsuccessful surgery on my dominant hand rendered performing most sleights somewhat problematic. But I'm still more than happy to be involved in inventing and writing, perhaps adding something useful to the literature of the subject, and maybe inspiring newcomers the same way I was inspired as a young man. This is the publicity photo I now use for all my scribblings. I look back with great fondness on my life in magic, the generous friends met along the way, and the pleasure in having had so much fun with my audiences. And here's something else to think about in this age of videos and cell phones. For me, it all began with books and face-to-face encounters. I wouldn't have had it any other way.